The NHL Draft Lottery is tonight, and the San Jose Sharks have the best odds of any team. JD Young of Locked On Sharks is here to talk about the lottery, what it means for the Sharks, and where they are in their rebuilding program. Coming up next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show a familiar face and voice to Locked On NHL fans, JD Young of Locked On Sharks. And JD, what is the buzz around San Jose and the Sharks organization for tonight's draft lottery?
I think tonight is a much more different field than when the Sharks were in the exact same position last year, right? Last year, of course, with Macklin Celebrini, you went through one of the worst regular seasons in franchise history, among NHL history as well, just how poor of a season it was. And while this year, you definitely saw much, signs of improvement, maybe not too much in the win-loss record, but you did see signs of improvement with Celebrini and Smith. This year just feels different for the Sharks and Sharks fans because you've already done the hard part of getting Macklin Celebrini, who you feel is going to be a superstar in the NHL. And this year, while there isn't really the same buzz with Matthew Schaefer and Michael Misa, it just kind of feels like, oh, cool, we're collecting another piece, like the very Thanos. Let's just keep collecting all these top end picks here until we can eventually start to enter our competitive phase. So I think for Sharks fans, and myself included in this, it's you're not as stressed as you were going into last year's draft lottery, where if it wasn't Macklin Celebrini, why did we lose all these games? This year, it feels like with a top 3 pick here, you're gonna get a good player no matter what. And while some players might fit what the Sharks are looking for a little bit more, Matthew Schaefer, either way, you're going to be walking away with a good player.
What is it about Schaefer that, in your opinion, makes him the best fit for the Sharks?
Well, the Sharks are missing that super high-end puck-moving offensive defenseman in their pipeline. And while we would prefer a right-handed defenseman because the Sharks don't really have a ton of high-end right-handed defensemen in their prospect pool, Schaefer, who is left-handed, he's still really good at hockey. And the big knock with Schaefer is just the injury, right? He started the season with mono, missed a couple games there, came back, was excellent. Then he got hurt at World Juniors where he broke his collarbone, and then we didn't get to see him the rest of this season. So there is that with Schaefer of this, can he stay healthy? And I'm not too worried about a collarbone break. I would rather take that over blowing out your knee or a soft tissue. The bones will heal. But with Schaefer, his ability to play a full 200-foot game, create offensively in the zone, and be that offensive driver that the Sharks do need from the blue line, as well as shut things down defensively. And the kid is so young. He's 2 weeks away from being in the 2026 draft. So you think about the runway with him of just how much he still has to grow. And that's, I think, was what's so appetizing about Schaefer, just because of what he would do on the blue line, especially when you consider Sam Dickinson, who the Sharks drafted 11th overall in last year's draft, right? It would really give you a nice pairing or combo where you can have one of those guys on the ice for 45 minutes throughout the game. And that's what most good teams do, especially when you get to playoff hockey, right? Is you have to have these guys who can play both sides, play well in their own zone, but also drive offense as well. And a Schaefer-Dickinson combo would be a big step for the Sharks.
How about, you guys are guaranteed one of the top 3 picks. Where do the other top 2 players potentially fit in with San Jose?
If Schaefer isn't the guy, I think Misa is going to be it's either going to be Schaefer or Misa, depending. If the Blackhawks win the draft, I wouldn't be surprised if they lean Misa to try to give Connor Bedard that friend, right? You see with the Sharks, you have Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith. it's like you can kind of see where they're going with that, right? You know, that you think back to the old Blackhawks with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. They're trying to recreate that, and the Blackhawks have drafted a lot of defensemen highly over the past couple of seasons. But Michael Misa, not as high end as a Bedard or a Celebrini, but kind of in that tier right below, and well worthy of being the number one overall pick in this year's draft. Just dominated in the OHL this season, and it sounds like he is expected to go to college next year, which I think would be a really good step for him to kind of play against some older, tougher competition. But his ability to play, again, kind of play that full 200-foot game, drive offense as well, which is what you're doing. And I think he's going to be a center in the NHL. All those things would make Schaefer a very, very worthy number one player. The draft starts at number 3, though, because it kind of feels like Schaefer, Misa's 1, 2, like however you want to put them in. But then I think it really opens up, and you have guys like Porter Martone, who kind of fits that power forward. James Hagens, who was kind of the consensus number 1 heading into the draft. Didn't have the year at Boston College that you would maybe hope for or expect. You have Anton Frandel, Victor Eklund. It really opens up after these top 2 picks. But if you are the Sharks and you do get that 3rd pick, I would probably lean Porter Martone, because I think he gives you a little bit something different in the Sharks pipeline. But you could talk me into any of those guys I just named at number 4, and depending on the day, I could, or number 3, depending on the day, I could probably be swayed into it. So all those guys all have a legitimate argument, I think, to be the 3rd pick in the draft.
And where do you think there's a big drop off? How many players are there in that second tier that you mentioned?
I think it's those, and I think there's maybe a little bit of a jump down there, but then when you start to kind of get to that mid-teens 20, it really falls this year, and that's where I think you saw teams much more willing to trade first round picks this year, because the draft isn't as deep. Now I do think there's another sweet spot from everyone I've talked to, kind of that second, third round, where there's going to be a plethora of players in their range, but there isn't the oh, could this guy be the next Wyatt Johnson, or could this guy be the next Logan Stankoven? And I think there's just going to be a lot of really solid players who fit needs. Kind of more of a meat and potatoes type of draft from what I've studied and what I've read and the people I've talked to. It is very much a meat and potatoes, fill some needs type of draft, and you kind of keep chugging along.
Where do you think the Sharks stand in their rebuild now? I mean, they've been accumulating picks, as you mentioned. What are the expectations for this year, and what are they trying to accomplish?
I think this last season was kind of, you're hoping the end of the basement phase, where you're just the bottom picking first in the draft, or one of those teams, right? And I like to call it Unlocked on Sharks. You enter the fun and frisky phase, where you're a little bit more competitive, right? You're not maybe you're in the mix for a playoff spot until January, February, where you kind of still see yourself in the hunt type of graphics, right? But we still know this team has a long way to go, and this team was much more competitive. They, I think they lost they were 30 games that they were either a 1 goal or an empty netter away from kind of time. And I think you're going to start to see a lot of those losses turn into wins. So I think for the Sharks, if you look at what your Southern rivals did, the Anaheim Ducks, right, where they were picking 3rd, and then now they're picking 8th or 9th. And I think that's kind of the path for the Sharks this year. And they have a top 3 pick. They have $40 million of cap space. They have to spend at least $20 million just to hit that cap floor. So I do think it's going to be Mike Grier trying to plug some holes here, and just to get this team to be just more competent. And you hope with Askarov, who's been playing very well in the AHL playoffs, next year he kind of comes in and just gives you that a much more solidified goaltending performance, especially compared to what we saw after the Sharks traded Blackwood, where you had Alexander Georgiev and Vitek Vanacek and a whole plethora of guys just kind of rotating in. Just some stability on the back end. I think that'll go a long way, as well as seeing Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith in both jumping into year 2, and whoever else the Sharks kind of add in free agency. So I'm not expecting maybe a Canadiens type of run where, you go from picking a top 5 to making the playoffs. But again, just that fun and frisky phase where you're in it for a little bit longer. Maybe you're not selling everything that isn't nailed down at the trade deadline, and kind of starting to continue to look ahead.
All right. Well, looking forward to the fun and frisky phase. JD, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Of course, you can find Locked On Sharks wherever you listen to podcasts, including this one, as well as on YouTube. I'll be back tomorrow on this same channel to talk with Seth. 100% a Cam Fowler joke will be made. That is a guaranteed. Or, of course, you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at MyFryHole.
All right, JD, thanks so much.
Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need an extra hand for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple. Within a day, you'll get multiple qualified candidates to choose from. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today.